Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. And as usual, we're going to talk non-spoilery thoughts and opinions up front, and then jump over to the spoiler section where we can talk in more detail. So remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So, Iron Gold is the fourth book in the Red Rising series, and there's been a 10-year time jump. So originally when I added this book to the TBR and I kind of read the back of it, I thought that it was just going to basically be a epilogue story, just the generic points of what happened after the war and like how they're going to try to resettle society and like fix everything or whatever. But I was pleasantly surprised when I found out it was not only like a bit of an epilogue, but it was a completely like different type of story. It was Pierce basically changed his structure and the way he does everything in order to start this new beginning of a new trilogy. So Pierce does continue to write in first person, but in this one he starts to shift POVs. So it's not just all from Darrow's point of view. So of all the different POVs that we experience, we get Darrow's POV, we get Laro's POV, who is a young red woman who just comes up out of the mines and basically after the rising and stuff. So we get like a decent ground level POV from her. And this character named Ephraim, who has a connection to people in the rising, but he didn't go down the exact same path they did over these last 10 years. So we get to find out what's going on there, and we get to get into the mind of Lysander. We see everything through his POV for his part of the story. So all the different storylines here for a while felt a little disconnected, and I was kind of like not digging it for a while, because when we were talking about the young red woman, I believe her name was Laura, I could be wrong, I can't remember, but when we were talking about her stuff, like I almost got completely bored, because in the beginning of her story I wasn't very interested, and I immediately didn't think it was going to connect to anything else. So I just was like, why are we not sticking with Darrow? I want to know what's going on with everything that is the fallout, because there's been some stuff that's happened in the 10 years. So we basically start off in the middle of some fallout. So I wanted to know, what was going on with that, but we jumped to these other characters. I'm like, man, what's going on? What's going on? And I wasn't really appreciating it for a bit, but after a while I got into it and I started to pay attention to their stories, and I saw that I was actually getting something that I didn't get in the original trilogy that I really, really wanted. So the original trilogy of Red Rising is all from Darrow's POV, and it's all specifically from the perspective of like Gold Society onto the war and everything. So as a result of that, it's limited. Like we don't get to just do casual stuff that often. It's like he was always in these areas that were very specifically like gold oriented. Like, so the settings were almost very much the same, because they had a very old world aesthetic about them. But when we get to follow these new characters, we're on like ground level, and we get to see the cities and like how everybody that's not, a high color gold or like a silver merchant or anything like this, like we get to see how they are. And the impression I got from just some of the city stuff, like Pierce describes it as being drenched in neon and stuff, I immediately went to Blade Runner. So I'm thinking some of these, like, because a lot of the cities are described as being very congested and overpopulated and stuff like that, because after the Rising there's a lot of resettlement to do and all this stuff, and it's just it won't be done that fast. So there's just like more, and there's just so many people, so it just gives me very much a Blade Runner feel. So I was really liking that, getting more world building and actual settings and stuff and different stuff like that through these different POV shifts. I thought that was really cool, and that really helped me really get into their stories, and especially the things that started to happen in those stories is like perfect. So the writing style, as I said, it continues to be first person. So every time we switch POV, it's first person. But something that is a great improvement on the previous trilogy is it's either just by way of, doing multiple POVs, or it's just something that Pierce realized what was happening and he, specifically tried to deal with it. So the issue that I had in the previous trilogy is he would always write these kind of twists that were just like they work in the moment, but if you think about it for any period of time, it doesn't work, because it came down to Darrow basically having to lie to himself in order to keep the audience to believe, keep the reader hanging on to the needs of the twist. Like, we wouldn't believe the twist. He basically had to lie because it's all in his head. So he basically is lying to himself in order for us to not get spoiled on the twist. So in this story, by switching POVs, we get to see the situation that's going on, that's building up, that's going to become a twist. And it kind of makes sense, like, without him having to, directly be lying to the audience or come up with some way of Darrow or any of the other characters just basically lying to themselves. So that was a great improvement on it, and I really like that. But the weakest part of the story has to be Darrow's story. So the entire book is separated into the different POVs, and they're all very much different stories, but a lot of them do kind of converge, and a lot of the events and the subject matter, it's all tied together in a really neat way that it doesn't feel too, separated like islands of storytelling or anything. So I really dug that. But the sad part is like Darrow, because I pretty much picked this up right after finishing the original trilogy, so I'm very much in the headspace of, what we're following Darrow, what's going on, and all that kind of stuff. But switching POVs, I was like, okay, I had a tough time with it, and I kind of got over it. But then I kind of realized, like, Darrow's barely in this story. He's just got one singular mission, and he's just off doing that thing, and then we're very much focusing on all this other stuff that's going on. And like, that's part of why I think it was the weakest, because it's the shortest. But the character of Darrow, he has changed so much, and he has been changed by this war and by 10 years of war, and just by everything that he went through in the original trilogy, that he has basically become someone that him, back in Red Rising would have hated now. So it's really interesting how that plays out. So let's talk about that a little bit more, but I can't talk about that without getting into spoilers. So let's jump into the spoiler section. So spoiler warning for Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. So Darrow's my biggest issue in this story, because he was so stupid. Like, I get it. I get the reasons why and all that kind of stuff, but he was making all these decisions that was so frustrating to me, all the way up to the very last page of the book, the very last bit of it. Like, dude, your kid was kidnapped. Your only kid. You're not even like Severo, who has a bunch of kids. Like, not to say, having multiple kids means losing one any easier or anything like that, but it just makes no sense to me. Like, your only child, your child who is basically the heir to all of this stuff that y'all built. I mean, I guess not, because it's all democratic now and stuff, so probably not so much. But either way, point blank period, it's your child. You're choosing to go to more war instead of go figure out what happened with your kid, and you're literally already writing him off as dead, talking about already mourning him and like don't know if they're alive and stuff like that. It's just like, wow, like, you haven't been around this kid's pretty much entire life, because you've been dealing with this war and all this stuff, and you always feel like you gotta go, be gung-ho first, running out and all this stuff. And like, so you've been a junkie father just by way of not being there and not really making a whole lot of effort to actually be there. And then like, this decision is so crappy. Like, yes, I understand all those people on Mercury are now stuck, and they're basically, sitting ducks for invasion and stuff from the Ash Lord's daughter. But I'm like, you're one person. I'm like, it's not like you're bringing an armada or like, a fleet of ships or anything like that. You're one person. Like, even if you could get to the planet unseen and unscathed or anything like that, what can you literally do to stop all of this stuff from happening? Like, it makes no sense. Like, and it wouldn't make more sense to try to get back home and like make sure all that stuff settled while sending out communications there. You could even on the way there send people from Luna all the way to, the Mercury, or people from, there's so many more ways to do it other than you just being a moron and be like, well, I'm at Venus now, so let me run over to Mercury and just say abandon everything else, and like, because I'm one person and somehow I'm going to do all of this crap. It's just like, it's just, so that was my rant about Darrow a little bit, but like, holy crap, like, it bugged me. Like, I was such a big fan of him in the original trilogy, and then he just started to make all these really dumb decisions. I get it from the perspective of this is what the war has done to him. This is what this life has turned him into and all that stuff. I get it. but I didn't care for it because it's just like, why can't you be just smarter? Just listen to Severo. Like, Severo called him out on his bad plans multiple times and then just got fed up with it at the end. Like, man, you can go keep doing this. You can go basically run to death because you believe in your own hype. You believe your own legend and all this stuff. You're like, I'm going home. I'm going to figure out what's going on with my daughter. I got to go check on my family, all this stuff. Like, he got his priorities together. And Severo's the crazy goblin. Like, he's just, you know, and like, it's like, Darrow, why you got to be so dumb? But like, yeah, I just try to basically excuse it as, yes, he's been through all this stuff and like the war and all the carving and all the influence all these people because he was quite young and all this stuff. So it's fundamentally changed everything about him and all this stuff. But it's like, man, that kind of sucks. And it's just like, dang. So yeah, and then something else I didn't really care for, but you know, it's whatever. Pierce ended it on multiple cliffhangers, like almost every story. Well, the couple of the stories converge, but we ended on cliffhangers, and I was like, no way. Like, there's a situation where Ephraim, one of the new characters, who is like, has this whole heist situation and like all this thief stuff. I really liked his crew and like Vulgar. Like, I really like their dynamic and I like them as characters. Like, they're really good and I want to see more of them. So I'm really, well, based on what happened, I have no idea what happens, but I'm really hoping Ephraim comes back. I mean, I'm just out of the sake of, you know, generic plot armor type stuff. I feel like the kids aren't going to die. So, you know. But at the end, we get a cliffhanger of Ephraim and the kids, Severo's daughter and Pax, Darrow's son. They're all in this ship that they, you know, stole from the location where the kids were kidnapped to and stuff, because they, you know, they were working together and stuff to go find the location of the kids. And the ship, the Senate, the queen of the syndicate, she freaking has remote control over the ship and she's like sending it back. So they, freaking Ephraim puts a bunch of grenades by the engines and like blow the engines in order to try to stop their remote autopilot and stuff. But it's like, we literally just get to the countdown of the explosions, like 3, 2, 1, and then it just cuts to another POV, and that's where we leaves it. I'm like, are you for real? Like, that's like the most cliffhanger that's ever cliffhang. Like, I was just like, man, for real, like, come on. We get a cliffhanger. We get a cliffhanger for Lysander as well. He's working with the Rim. He's out there with the Rays, like, cause the former sovereign down there, I feel like there was some shenanigans going on there. But they manipulated him to have to die. And on Io, I think it's really interesting because they didn't like terraform the moon entirely. So they just have like bubbles of habitability and stuff. So to execute someone, they basically just have them walk outside. And it's like negative hundreds of degrees Celsius and stuff. And you know, the air is toxic and all this stuff. So like they make it maybe 60 steps before they're dead. And like, it's a really intense ritual and stuff. I was like, oh, that's this. I really like the world building for the Rim, the other side of the asteroid belt. I like that stuff a lot. And now we're about to go to direct war with them. Because during the first trilogy, I always kind of wonder what was going on with them because they weren't a real big part of it. But that's what's being set up like now, and apparently Lysander is going to work with them because he's very much like, you know, we got to get everything back to the way it was, because I almost agree with him not really agree with him, but I understand his reasoning very easily, because from his perspective, it's like, you know, Darrow went in and just did all of this stuff and had no real plan to smooth it out, and now it's just chaos and bedlam, and they're like, well, you know, Gold has to go back and fix it and all this kind of stuff. So I kind of believe that and understand that, but like that's where his cliffhanger leaves off at. We're just like, okay, he's going to work with them and help with the war effort, and then we leave off the cliffhanger with Darrow going to Mercury and Severo going back to go get the family, and it just is like, I like cliffhangers, but like, I mean, to a degree, I like cliffhangers, but I was like, man, that was some cliffhanger stuff, especially with the kids. That's the thing that really got me. All right, I think I've ranted and raved about this a bit. Sorry, I guess I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up the review there. Like, I really liked it. I thought it was a good improvement. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it there and say, have you all read Iron Gold? If you have, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what your favorite part about it was, and what other kind of sci-fi kind of stories like this do you all like. It reminds me a little bit of Dune in the way it's, you know, multi-planetary civilization and stuff, but let me know about that in the comments down below. All right. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I will talk to you all next time. Peace.